With Power Rangers dead for the time being, I'm fully focused on Ranger Review. The idea all spawned from Operation Overdrive to warn people of bad products, but be also fair and review the good products too. Now, how was I going to do this? I hardly had anything. That's my biggest issue. I had the Super Zeo Megazord, Lightspeed, Lost Galaxy Morphers, the Dino Thunder stuff to name a few things. So we were going to run out of things very quickly. Deca Blue had his stuff, but it was also limited too. I also didn't know if we should review Morphers one at a time, or should I put them together. This was also when I finally started getting Super Sentai items. We needed to compare between US and Japan. I remember my first Sentai toy was Travelon. We didn't have any real order on reviews. If we did have more than one thing from a season, we would group them. It was also Deca Blue's idea to buy used items. So whatever he was able to get his hands on, that's what we reviewed. We usually filmed an entire month of reviews in one day. I'd keep the item till the videos were done. I had to film all the extra stuff. Close-ups, instructions, electronics, things like that. We recorded first with 2 cameras, then went to 3. It became a mess after a while. Loads of boxes, stuff everywhere to film. I also had to take a big gamble. I really wanted to get the Megazord review done. I own nothing from mmpr at this point, and Deca Blue only had Megazord and Dragonzord. We needed a Titanus, but I'm a stickler when it comes to having most of the item. I hate loose items. My favorite Zords are the carriers, and the only place that had Titanus with the box was on Amazon. Yes, I can see the dies of cringe gifts already, and it ended up being the most expensive PR item I ever bought. And I had no idea if it was the first or second release that removed the sleds. The guy had photographed the actual box, but it's MIB. He's not going to open it. I also needed Megazord to do the new Season 2 opening, so I went for it. Here's your $300. Now, the guy was cool. He gave me a free comic book with it, and I got lucky. It came with the Megazord sleds. So we were able to do the Season 1 Zords. Another thing that came out of this, Deca Blue Zords were in bad shape. They were 17 years old at this point. Those were his childhood toys, so they were very worn down. The T-Rex legs couldn't even stand up. His Dragonzord chest had corrosion on the battery terminals. So this started me doing research on how the toys work to figure out ways to fix them. His Megazord and Dragonzord were the first ones I took apart. I got the legs to stand again. I got the chest lights to work again. This ended up being the idea for a few videos I did later on. The channel is filled with different videos. I just don't like sticking to one thing. That's why you see me try different types of videos. Most don't work out though. It was hard to do the reviews. We were always butting up with running out of stuff, and after like a year of doing them, I wanted to do other things. That's where Ranger Rants came from. This is when I decided to buy actual camera equipment because we were using photo cameras that had video modes. They were crap. They didn't even shoot in widescreen. Deca Blue's camera shot at a weird frame rate, so it was a pain in the ass to synchronize the cameras. I had no lighting. I was using my living room's lamp and the natural light from a window, which is why some of the early reviews, like the Animus one, look like dirt. Nearly all the iterations for Ranger Review were done in this room. Now, this room used to be my dining room. I picked this room mainly because this was the easiest room to film with 2 windows. That was where our light source came from. So the very first iteration where we filmed the first 5 episodes of those pilot videos was at this wall. Then the majority of Ranger Review was filmed right over here against this wall next to my living room. When we had to do large items like Revolver Mammoth, we did it over here against this wall. And then the last iteration was when we were in the other room. I put money into this just to get these annoying problems out of the way. Ranger Rants was a mess on its own. I wanted to do another something for the channel, but what would be interesting? I was doing toy reviews. Why don't I start reviewing the show? It sounds simple, but you still have to figure out how to do it. This is also the first time I'm on camera. Whenever I come up with a video idea, I do a test video. So I was going to review the first episode of mmpr. Now, if you remember, it took me till episode 70 of Ranger Rants to review the first episode of mmpr. That's when the DVDs came out, but I also avoided it because of what happened in this test video. I just winged it. No script, didn't watch the pilot or the Jew Ranger episodes. I was doing it from all memory. Horrible idea. First time I was on camera, didn't know how to act in front of it. The second biggest problem was my eye line. You have to speak to the lens. You have to get used to that. I also needed a script to follow, and that was really difficult to figure out. There are people out there that can just talk no problem. I need to have my thoughts written down. So in the early days of Ranger Rants, I printed out my script because I couldn't think of a way to see it. Teleprompters are expensive, but eventually I got a laptop and did it that way. Another thing I ran into, early Rand episodes were poorly edited. I had to gain experience in that area. It took a while for things to become decent. Till this day, I still cause dumb mistakes. Remember my crap Earth Final Conflict review? Everything I did in the test view, I did in that review. I was so pissed off at myself. I wanted to scrap it really badly, but I needed it. That was another series I was constantly running out of stuff, and I would never have released it for any other reason. If you include all the video series I was doing and my regular job, I had 5 jobs. I sometimes filmed episodes at 1 a.m. There was one video I edited for 21 hours just to get it out on time. It's why I don't release videos every week now. Now back to Ranger Review. We covered a lot of mmpr 2010 simply because it was easier to get the current stuff versus trying to get the older things. We always ran into the problem of pieces missing, so it couldn't be a complete review. Other times we couldn't get a hold of certain things. The Q-Rex along with the Super Train, I've never been able to find complete ones that weren't overly expensive. I wanted to get some of the 80 Sentais to review. We also reviewed some of the more unimportant things. Those reviews didn't do good, so we stopped those. Not too long after that video, Saban came out of hibernation and said they bought the PR license. Now my first thoughts, they're actually adapting Shinkenger. The show is very Japanese. We've seen what they do with Japanese focus shows. They end up being alien rangers from another world. No matter how pessimistic I am, I will give things a chance. I was actually more pissed Cam didn't come back. So come 2011, the first episode of Samurai airs. It was strange for me to watch things on Nick. I didn't watch this station. I'm probably going to shock people that I've never watched a full episode of SpongeBob. I know the actors more from their roles in Shaolin Showdown, Futurama, and for Broadway and Gargoyles. Before Samurai even aired, I was already annoyed that the show was going to be 20 episodes long. The last few seasons of PR were 32 episodes, and that sucked. Now we're getting seasons split in half. There's not enough in the toy line. MMPR got bad in season 2 for that reason. Already 2 big negatives. I watched the first episode, and everyone knew something was wrong. This isn't the pilot of Samurai, and we found out later it's actually episode 3. The only good that came from that, it helped Mike. The only character I liked is him. If they had aired the actual pilot, I probably wouldn't have liked anyone. Now, the good from Samurai. The show finally went to HD. It looked really good. The Sentai footage didn't stick out. Some of the New Zealand actors returned for new roles, but it fell off. PR isn't the greatest acting show in the universe. All the seasons have some sort of cheese, but everyone felt really stiff. It was like the actors got only one take and they didn't have any knowledge of their characters. They were just inserts into the Shinkenger roles. They honestly felt worse than the MMPR cast. Now, this is not an insult to the MMPR cast. Their natural chemistry with each other is what made them work really well. But you shouldn't be worse than the first season of a 20-year-old show. That's why we make fun of lines like, "I must not fail." And if you've watched Shinkenger, they copy lines. This is the only season that says the script is written by the Japanese writer. It's ridiculous. Bulk and Spike, nothing wrong with them. I didn't get the heavy references to MMPR. You didn't need that. PR is more than just those things, but they had no purpose in the show. I could sum up Saban coming back to PR as them copying someone's homework. It just felt wrong. It was like they were phoning it in. Now, there's some justification why it happened. Samurai was adapted really fast. They had no time to do much, but still, it doesn't forgive them for ripping off MMPR. It was a big fumble on both Saban and Bandai. This is where Bandai went, nope, we aren't using anything from Japan anymore, and we are going to save as much money as possible. I will give Bandai one plus. They sold Shinkano. They tried selling the Japanese versions. It's just too bad that Go Sager was the next season, which people didn't like. Most likely why they stopped doing the releases. They would have made a killing if they were able to release Daijujin and kept going through the older years, not Go Sager. When Samurai reached the first season finale, it didn't even feel like a finale. Even if you didn't know anything about Shinkenger, you got the feeling the show was wasting your time. There was this buildup of the black box and it just stalls. There's no real big cliffhanger. Then, like everyone suspected, the skipped actual 2-part pilot aired on Nick. No reason to skip it like that. Then you have the holiday episodes. That was another thing to get used to. PR usually just had the holiday episodes be a part of the season, not be placed at random. A lot of things started off on the wrong foot, and it never recovered. How did Saban devolve? They went from mmpr all the way to Wild Force. They knew when to stop following the pigtails of mmpr. The show evolved with the times, but now it desperately was trying to bring back the feeling of the 90s. It doesn't have its own identity. Kids will not relate to that. Just because fans of all ages love PR doesn't mean do these things. I just want the show to be good. I don't want pandering. I think it was that Saban was so scared in putting all this money in, they played it way too safe and went with what worked, which ended up not working. Season 2 just went through the motions. Hardly anything changed. The Decker arc was a lame copy of the Shinkenger plotline. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the movie. Props they got Ika back to play Scott, and respect to him. After PR, he starred in some big roles, and he still came back to do the show. But besides that, I wish they didn't do it. They just didn't respect RPM. I don't understand why they had problems with RPM and the Disney seasons in general. They existed, they happened, and you can't badmouth them while you're doing what you're doing with Samurai. The only thing I will say that was better than Shinkenger was how they did Lauren. I really hated Kaoru in Shinkenger. I understood they needed the character to be a dick in order to get Takeru back into the show, but it was so extreme, it made Alex look like nothing when he took over the Time Force team. I'm glad Lauren never went that far. So Samurai finished up and went with very little care for me. The only thing I really remember was Jason Darby's cameo at the end. At least we get some closure, but that's not a good thing when I remember a 20-year-old character over the Samurai cast. I should be smiling, being sad seeing the team move on. 2 years for a PR season does not work. Could PR do better next year? I was one of the few that didn't mind them wanting to do Go Sager. I hated Go Sager, but that doesn't mean PR is going to be bad. And worst of all, the team not caring about the 20th anniversary. One of the major advantages of the show doing 2 years a Sentai season, you don't have to rush through anything anymore. You have the complete season, so you can easily come up with plot lines, character development, and all we got was garbage? So much of Go Sager was pasted in, then you had even more of mmpr pasted on top of that. The only characters I liked was Robo Knight and Mr. Burley. Everyone was cookie cutter one note. Troy didn't have a personality. Noah was no Billy. I would take Rose over Noah. Then you had Gia, you just had Mia on Samurai, and you also had Mike for a second time. Teleporting was only in the pilot. Whose bright idea was that? The school setting was worthless. The only time it had a purpose was the joke episode with Orion, and I didn't forget about in space not making sense with the school. But then you have the villains from Go Sager. They were already poor from the Japanese footage, but now you're putting that problem all within just 20 episodes because they decided that it was a great idea to adapt 2 seasons of Sentai that equal 100 episodes into only 40. It keeps getting more and more dumb. The Go Sager cars didn't get any fixes to the footage. You had cars that had different names appear on screen. And since the Megaforce characters were actually different from their counterparts, they got no real personal arcs. The last thing that hurt Megaforce, no one cared about it because everyone was waiting for the anniversary season. The little good it had, it didn't matter. I liked Robo Knight, and he ends up disappearing. Why couldn't they just turn him into Orion? The power-ups made no sense. It reminded me of Digimon Season 1. The dub writers were stupid when they renamed the evolution levels. Ultimate level in the dub was originally perfect, and Mega was originally Ultimate. You had Ultra Mode when going to Season 2. They had Super Mega Mode. What is there really to say about the characters? Troy is more generic than Jason. Jake likes Gia and soccer. Noah, he's just there. Pink, I don't even remember her name. She's just a camera girl and does nothing. You had Ernie 2.0 with Froyo Dokes, the only decent character, Robo Knight, and that's because they just copied Sentai. Season 1 is so forgettable, more so than Samurai. The transition between the 2 seasons never made sense. Saban dealt with these problems 20 years ago and did better. They understood they needed to keep some things from Rita into Season 2. Here, they link Varrock with the Gokaiger villains, but had him vanish for unknown reasons, just because they didn't want to film new footage. The dude got his ass kicked for the whole year, then his brother comes to Earth with a massive fleet, aren't you going to go to him? He's going to have a huge amount of resources to use. Imagine if Goldar went with Rita in her dumpster. How does the show from 1994 with way less money do better? You could have just played through all of the Ghost Ranger footage, killed off Robo Knight, and that could have been your impactful season finale. Losing a Ranger is a damn good cliffhanger. Plus, you made him a freaking robot. You had an out if you wanted to have him come back. If I was working on the show, I would have used Robo Knight as a way to use the Datus footage. His body was damaged beyond repair, so Noah used whatever he could to keep his memory module from failing, used an arcade machine he owned. We would have gotten to know Noah more. He loves to collect arcade stuff, pinball machines, foreign machines, boom. You got a way to use Datus. They could have used more of the older episodes to save on cost, expand on the finale. Then lead into Super Megaforce, where I would have had Gosei and Tentu construct a new body that looks human. This would have turned Robo Knight into Orion. You're so bent on references to mmpr, this would have echoed the White Ranger. I would have done shots that mimic Billy's POV from above. Instead, they just have a new set of powers come from nowhere. Jake's suit color changes for no reason. They just did not care to make any of this believable. All you had to do was pull a Jungle Fury. Have Cam come back from behind the scenes. If you can't get Jason Chen, keep him in shadow. I would have had an actor wear the Cybercam outfit, give him a hologram effect, and then you can have Tensu mention Cybercam was the one who came up with the new suits and made the Black Ranger suit green. Done. It fits Cybercam's MO, it brings an old character back, which you did need for the team-up ability later anyway, and it fixes a simple problem. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and it links to 2/6 Rangers. This is what I mean when I say Power Rangers has so much potential, even with budget constraints. Super Megaforce would have been far more respected if they did little things like this, but because it seemed the production hated the Disney seasons, there was no chance of this ever happening. Instead, we got bizarre stuff from reshooting fight scenes with Sentai costumes that were never adapted into PR, a Jew Ranger fight changed into a Lost Galaxy fight, no light speed suits, and Zord power-ups from seasons that had no guest stars, besides Jaded and Casey. And the worst anniversary episode ever. I can only give two good things from season 2, Orion and Casey. For whatever reason, the writers came up with a really good background for him. They gave Orion a few focus episodes. I don't get why the other 5 suffered so badly. Then we come to Casey's episode, the best one. This is what everyone wanted out of Super Megaforce. Super Megaforce had the record of so many mistakes. It amplified how awful the season turned. I was shocked when they flat out used the Monster Love episode from Gokaiger and even kept a Japanese lady in. We are going backwards to mmpr season 1 footage levels. In my mind, I was saying the anniversary episode better be that freaking good if they're cutting corners like this. But it was a big, fat nope. We waited over a year for that episode to air, and it screwed everyone over being in the finale. I've been through a lot of bad seasons. Super Megaforce didn't just fail, it buried itself. The easiest layup in the world. You had time, and you had the blueprint in making something great. There's a reason why Gokaiger made their anniversary as a movie. You did the Samurai Team-Up movie, but you didn't want to make this a movie? I know it would be a big expense, but why didn't you team up with Bandai? Come up with ideas, lock down actors, and start getting toys prepared for this event. It was a perfect time to reissue stuff. Say they got Rhett Fisher to locked in, Bandai could make a new version of the Titanium Morpher, have it come with his Ranger key. Mike and Emily were coming back, why not release the Japanese Shoto phone with the Shinkenger Ranger key set, including Kaoru's key since Lauren used the Shoto phone in Samurai. There's other ideas I had. Damon was coming back, why not release a new version of the Transdagger, one that comes with the red and green stickers, along with a LG Ranger key set that includes Astronema. This would have helped pay for the episode/movie idea. Don't you want to sell stuff? Say what you want with Bandai Japan going overboard with the Ranger keys, but how much money did they make off Gokaiger while we got loads of good stuff and a good season for that effort? PR did the reverse. If it weren't for me making that promise and sticking through the bad, this easily was another point I would have quit the show. It wasn't just a disappointment to the fans, it was disrespectful to the actors. We're 4 years into the revival and all 4 seasons have been poor. Not a great start for Saban Brands. Hang on for part 3 where I go into Dino Charge, giving some hope back to me. Thanks again for watching. If you have a suggestion or a topic you'd like me to do, leave a comment below and I may use it next time.